and welcome. My name is Ramkiran Balal, and as always, today I'm inviting yet another guest to discuss children's sport, health, and fitness. The guest I'm inviting today has a lot of extensive experience in the particular field that we're going to talk about. He's been a professional footballer. He's been in the US and studied sports science and also played football there. And then he was back in India and dealt a lot with youth sport in the fitness. He's had a youth football league that he started in India, and now presently he's in Portugal running a football academy. Our guest for today is Elvis Goes.
Hi Ram, how are
How-
you?
Good, good. How are you doing?
you know, early morning. You got me out of the bed early today, so I'm doing fine. I mean, it's been quite a few months, but
Yes,
doing well.
yes,
Slowly
that's good.
recovering from this.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I know you're saying that things are just getting back to normal there. Here in India, it's still a little slow. Maybe by next month or the month after, we should get. You played professional football. You've been in the US. You've been in Portugal. You're in Portugal now, and I don't really need to tell what the problem is, but just for people who are listening, for them to know, we are discussing the whole process of youth athletic development, children's fitness, children's health, what needs to be done. You feel that there's a lot more that can be done, right?
Yeah,
And
I think there's a differentiation we need to do. I mean, in terms of where we are in India, and I think it's a very broad question, at this moment. But I would say um, that this question that comes to my mind is, where do we begin? I mean,
right,
or what are the prerequisites? I mean, we talked about it. I get parents asking me this question all the time. When do I start training my kid? How early should I start? And I think we can start the conversation over there, and give you a little bit of my perspective, of course, a little bit of historical perspective, because in terms of introducing myself, I think that itself will take a day, because I have had an amazing journey. I mean, it's I really do not comprehend how the forces of nature comes together to give us what we want in life sometimes. So let me take you back a little bit, and give you my youth understanding. So the audience can sort of, some of them can relate to, some of them will be absolutely outside the realm. So
right,
I'm 55 years of age. I was born and raised in Goa. I mean, literally in a sort of a village life, I would say. We lived in a huge home. It's a family home in Altino. It still is a family home, but right now it's in the suburb of Altino. And in those days growing up, it was sort of a home just outskirts of the jungle, you can say, or the wildlife. So there was no civilization there at all. I mean, and the natural process, that what I saw athletic, was running around in the fields, and playing, climbing up trees, plucking mangoes, disturbing my neighbor. I mean, name it, right? I mean, the childhood, what we saw versus my son. If I step out of my house today, it's a concrete jungle. There is no open space left.
yes,
Absolutely none. So where did I learn all my skills? I think in the streets, and started it quite early.
right,
So I would begin there, and
yes,
say that the early development, as early as 3 years old, begins at home and in the society where you live. and
right,
and the and the challenges which we are facing in the metropolitan cities like Bangalore, because I lived in Bangalore for 7 years. So my
right,
journey starts there. In Goa, I'm born and raised in Goa. I end up, through the natural process. We can talk about it in details a little bit along the journey. I stumble and I become a professional player. I become a professional player. I meet people. I get introduced to international coaches and United States. Through luck and miracle, I end up in United States in 1991, beginning of 91. So I was going from a village culture to a civilized culture. So I lived there for 16 years. I get educated, so forth. I did a short trip in China for a couple of years, just basically business and working in Shenzhen, in Guangzhou. and Taiwan and so forth. I was based out around there. Then in 2006, I come back to India. And of course, I wanted my kids to, and the reason why I was very decisive when I moved back to India, it was to come here, come back to India to give my kids that what I had. In 2012, I got this opportunity again because of my sons to move out of India and come to Europe. And it's been last 8 years I'm here in Portugal. So
Brilliant. It's an amazing journey. I mean, really. I mean, and you know what's so fascinating is you've been in places which really matter. You know, and that's exactly why you're here. I want to ask a lot of questions on this. So let's
okay,
get started with this then.
all
So
right,
it's
okay.
very interesting. You said you were in Goa, you know, kind of a very small town setup, you know, and from there your entire journey started. I remember you said that your dad once gave you a football for for one of your early birthdays, and he used to take you for all the local matches happening there and every weekend and stuff like that. And somewhere there, it all started.
I mean, every cricketer out there who is a professional cricketer, and what do you think they are going to give their kids? I mean, someone who loves that particular sport, whether it's a tennis player, I mean, Leandro Paes or Mahesh Bhupathi and all the Sania Mirza. I mean, all the top tennis, or Bobby Anju. I mean, Pramila Ayappa. I would say every single, or Sachin Tendulkar, for example. I mean, all the great sportsmen. The first thing they want to do, the love that they have for that particular sport, is what they introduce their kids. And usually they introduce their kids at a very early age. And I think that's where the key is. My dad was not a professional footballer or a sportsman, but he was a professional photographer who used to be at the sports events. In fact, he was sort of like the iconic photographer in town, and everyone went to Goy's photo art studio those days to invite him for the events. By default, I was his wingman, taking along with the Yashica camera, those one that you put on the tripod, you had to balance, and nothing like the digital today. And Dad would set up everything, so I would be first hand, right in front, first row, basically right next to the goal line. There, the professionals right in front of my eyes. I mean, so the early childhood was this introduction to the game of football for his love. But I would say that I was not a good footballer in the early age years, because my development came little longer, and that is something also parents needs to understand. There are early bloomers and there are late bloomers. And what I saw was, I was coming along of age, and then everyone had just spring forward physically, and I was lagging behind. I would say the probably I hit the puberty a little late. I would say probably 13 and a half and maybe 14. And then between 14 and 16, I just grew. I mean, like no other. And I was athletically good.
Right.
That led me to my football. Going back to my dad's introduction, I think if I was to share something, a thought with the parents, or any listener for that matter, I would say introduce your kid early to sports. Not necessarily he'll become a professional, but he will learn some key lifestyle changes. And these are not to make a professional. And I'm going to say this with a great deal of respect, because I have two sons. I introduced both of them simultaneously, same age, basically 3 years old and 2 years. I mean, they're a year apart, year and a half apart.
Right.
And I would say one went on to academics and the other one went on to sports. They were given the same stimulus, both of them.
Yeah.
The recreational league, taking them out. I mean, I remember at one point my older son said, "Papa, this is not for me." and I can see the same situation, because we are four in our family and I have an older brother. Of course, he's in sports and he lives in England. And if you look at me, both of us had the same upbringing. One becomes academics and the other one becomes a sportsman. So yes, to me, I think that early introduction to the game was important. I think that was the key factor. Of course, I can tell you the journey and the Aristotle effect I have had in my life, on my life, in terms of being exposed to the top athletes at that point, saying that, wow, I want to be one of them. I hope I answered that
Yes, yes,
question.
absolutely, absolutely, brilliant. You hit the nail there. I was going to ask you the exact question, and in your answer, I think I'm going to take it off from there. When you said your other son who went into academics, he still
Yeah.
played sport, right? And he said that, Dad, this is not for me. Now I want to dwell little bit on that, because we have a lot of kids coming in that category, right? So
Yes.
how does a parent motivate a child then?
I would say I have introduced them to fitness, both of them. I make it a point that they even, I mean, one is 22, other one is 19, and I enforce certain things on them. I say, son, you have to go for a jog, you have to do fitness. I think I want to go a step back for a second over here. When I say I introduce both of them equally. And I think there is a notion out there saying that sometimes early specialization in sports can lead to injuries. Now, if you read the science journal in detail, that particular study, you will understand a lot of other specifics that go into it and what do you mean by specialization. So I don't want to dwell on that subject at the moment, but I would say to you that general exposure to sports is key to a character building. And I think that's, if I at look at both my sons, they're both introduced to the same principles of sportsmanship. And one is the ace performer in education, other one is the ace performer in sports. And of course, and if you are the parents would like to know sometimes, hey, how do I identify what my son is going to be? Well, I do not have a crystal ball, and neither do you, and I don't think anybody can tell you that. However, there is enough science over there. There are enough temperament, intelligence, or personality tests that you can take. I wouldn't say as early as young kid, but you will see the signs. You will see the signs that the kid has certain. He's an extrovert or an introvert. Does he have the neuromuscular coordination? It's in you.
Yes.
We say this all the time. Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo are not made by anyone. They were born that way. And we all have our gifts, and in each department. So for me, I feel that, yes, you introduce them early, but the nature will take its course, and you will go in the direction where you're supposed to.
Yes. No, very beautifully said. Beautifully said. So, Elvis, who were you inspired as a child? Why? Were you inspired by? You see kids nowadays, they're inspired by Virat Kohli, they take up cricket, they're inspired by Messi, they play football. It's another thing, they may eventually become footballers or cricketers or not, but there's a spark somewhere, which ignites something. Did that happen to you? And if at all, what was it?
Yes, I would say, as far as motivation and the desire to be successful, I think came from the exposure to Western movies. And this is a little, and I'll tell you why. We were living in a village, literally, bare feet, playing bare feet in paddy fields, running around with a bicycle tire. These are unheard of, right? This is like, had a slingshot to go pluck coconut trees or mangoes. Come on, I grew up in a village, literally. So, and then there was a matinee show every Sunday after church. Dad would take me to watch a movie, and what we saw there was the Hollywood inspiration.
Yes.
Western movies, and we all as kids sitting up. There's a square in Panjim. It's called the Lyceum Square. It is an old Portuguese structures, which is the High Court today. And there's a staircase over there. We used to play in front over there, and there was a big cement block over there, by about, I would say, 60 meters by 30 meters. And we would play football over there. Then after that football, all the betting was exchanged, because we always played for something, whether it was a popsicle or a limbu soda or a batad vada or a samosa. We played for something, and that was the motivation in terms of
Yes.
football. We would sit down there and we would all talk about going to America. Come on, hey, have you seen this in America? They have the skyscrapers. So there was a motivation to get out of where we were in terms of the poverty and our lifestyle. And we said the way to do it was, we saw our parents, they were earning very little money, working either as a teacher. My mom was a teacher. She was earning about maybe 350 rupees, maybe 250 rupees those days, but that's a long time ago. You're talking about in the early 80s or late 70s.
Yeah.
And for me, looking at that, I'm going, wait a minute, I'm going to be 17, 18 here, and I need to earn some money. What's the best way to earn money? And we saw footballers who were getting thousands at the same time. And we were saying, okay, let's become footballers. So if you're looking at motivation as far as athletes are concerned, yes, there were athletes, because those, remember, Ram, there was no television in our days. Television came only in 1982 for the Asian Games. And there was like an Onida that was my dad had bought. And I used to see that entire village used to come and sit in our living room. And people would be coming from all, and we were the only family at one point had in the ward that had the television. And there was, I mean, come on, this is like takes me back years. But that inspiration of getting out of that was my inspiration and motivation to say, I need to get out of these circumstances. What do? I become a sportsman. And the best way to make money is, they're paying well, let me try. And I said that to my mom after my 12th standard. Of course, I was a good student, not a brilliant one. Of course, everyone was scoring 75 and 85% those days, and getting nowadays, they score 100%, probably 150%. You know, I mean, there are geniuses out there, but I was not one of them. And I told my mom, I took a sabbatical after my 12th, and I said, listen, I'm going to pursue football. And my mom is a teacher, right? I mean, listen, buddy, you're not going to become a popcorn seller on the beach, right? Or I need you to go get an education. I'll give you a time. So I got those 2 years and prepared myself to be a professional football player. And by luck, I mean, literally by luck, I got there.
Amazing. I mean, your story, I am reminded of my childhood when you said you played in the fields with a tire and all that. You know, it was so much like, I mean, the coastal area, right? The entire belt. I think we had the same games. It's awesome. So, Elvis, you were enrolled in a summer camp at the age of 11. Let us get into that now. How did you get into football at age of 11 in a summer camp, and how did you eventually end up, going to be a professional footballer? And you played for what? Tempo, a couple of clubs.
Yeah, okay. So let me give you the little short of a football journey. My dad says to me at a young age, basically, you need a structured program. You need to understand football as a coach, and there's a summer program happening. I need you to. I was 11 years old, my dad said, you need to go to this program. So he would cycle me and drop me over there. And then after the training was done, I had to walk home. Now you're talking about 15 kilometers walk all the way up from downtown Panjim, all the way up the hill to Altino. And it's a steep climb. Yeah. Okay. Talking about cycling on a high slope. So I get introduced to football. My coach was Yostak Pereira. He's still alive, bless his heart, and a brilliant man. And the football from a structured way was introduced to me. So there was a warm up. Of course, our days warm up was run in circles, and then play football, and then do some abdominal exercises as a cool off. But that was the traditional knowledge that had been passed on to them. I get introduced to football from that. So I played in the sub-juniors in several. I have a photo, very nice old photo, shaking hands with the chief guest. So from early on, I don't know. I mean, I would say I had some leadership skills or whatever it was. I was chosen as a captain. And I went on to captain several stages. So sub-juniors, I'm there, I'm playing, and I evolve as a player. From there, I play with the Don Bosco Oratory. Now, Don Bosco Oratory was the Don Bosco's was the key. Every Don Bosco school throughout India always had a football field. Of course, in Bangalore, they have better football fields, which are like international schools, has better facilities than the state level facilities. I have seen, especially at James College and Indus, where my kids went, for example, all the other international schools. I would say to you that, so Don Bosco's was the key growing ground for us. They would give us porridge, a bowl of porridge, some, we used to call them dog biscuits, and a glass of milk. You would go to play for that, actually. So that was your, after the game, you got that. So we became Don Bosco Oratory players. Then from there, we played in the second division. From there, we got selected. I got selected in the juniors, Goa juniors. From Goa juniors, of course, everybody is watching you. Everybody wants you. From there, I signed to Varka Sports Club, which is now today Churchill Brothers. Mr. Churchill Alema was from Varka, and the club had just promoted. There's a very unfortunate story over there, because I played in the nationals in Guwahati. No, sorry, Coimbatore. And then I also played nationals in Guwahati, if I'm not mistaken my thing. And an incident took place where my character is as such. I'm an outspoken person, where I had a fallout with the coach, and it is a negative situation which turned out very positive for me. So I had a fallout with the coach. The coach says I disrespected him. I'm the first 11 player, almost like a vice captain, very important for the Goa national juniors, and I get left behind on the bench for the semi-finals against West Bengal. Just a pure personal mix-up and a misunderstanding at the training session. And then the coach goes and tells all the clubs situated in the Panjim. It was Panvel, it's Cesar Goa, Dempos, those three professional clubs. Elvis is not the kid that you need to sign. He's got a character, and he's not a professional. So I do not have a location, because everybody wants me, because I'm a top defender, right full back, upcoming, somebody who's well sought after. However, the seeds of negativity have been sown, and I don't have a chance. So I have to commute now all the way to Margao and all the way to Varka. Now this is a journey, and this is something I need to share, because the importance of learning perseverance, of becoming a professional. Yeah. So I had to wake up at 5:30 a.m. in the morning. So of course I go for a tryout over there. I make the cut. Of course they want me. They're going, how come Dempo is not signing you? How come Cesar is not signing you? Well, unfortunately, I have a bad reputation in those clubs, and I need to rebuild my reputation. So I'm commuting from Panjim all the way to Varka, early morning, 5:30 a.m. I get up at 5 o'clock, pack my bags, everything was kept. My dad was, he was just a jewel of a heart. Man was, and my mom, I cannot ignore my mom. She's still alive. Her dad passed away a few years ago. And I would say they would wake up, they would put this big alarm that woke up the whole house, neighborhood basically. And I would wake up, I would grab my bag, run to the mail delivery truck, because the buses were not leaving till about 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock, and I had to leave early. So I would jump on a mail delivery truck from the Goa postal office. From there, I would head all the way to Margao, take a cycle from Margao all the way to Varka. And I did that for almost like a whole year. And then, of course, I played in the first 11 at Varka. They gave me sort of vice captainship, and they took good care of me. And Churchill Alema was, he was very a football loving person. That entire family they loved football. Today they're in politics, but those days football was their passion. And he gave me a good start over there. Of course, I played with fire and anger when I played against Dempos or Cesars. And I remember, I have this, I going after players, physically with my tackles and so forth. And the guys would literally move out of the way. And I had a reputation at that point saying that, be careful, Elvis is playing on the right flank. Do not, don't try to dribble past him. He will hurt you. And I'm going, that's not as bad as it sounds, but I was like that. But it became so obvious to them that I was a good player. I had the qualities, I had everything, mental aptitude to play at that level. So Dempo signed me the following year and recruited me. I mean, paid me a big salary, and I can say to you that my salary at that point, of course, it was not nothing compared to what
Yes.
value was. But you're talking about 86, 87. I mean, the salary of 3,000 rupees was a big salary. It was collectively, I would say, my mom's and dad's and my older brother's salary put together. I
Oh,
far exceeded that, and I shared my, of course, in our family household, I would take my portion and give the rest to my mom. So,
correct.
but yes, that was my journey as far as to become a professional. From there, yes, I mean, it was, I mean, as they say, the rest is history. I played
Yes.
for Dempos
Correct.
after that, and then in my final year, 2 years, I played for Cesar Goa. Um,
Correct.
and then while playing an international game against South Korea, an opportunity opened up for me to go to United States. And I had at that point I was in college also. So in my last final 3 years, I did my first year, second year, third year economics at the Goa University. And when I finished that, I finished my I left football at the ripe age of 23, 22, and going on 23rd birthday. It was hard, for sure. It was hard because I would have
Yes.
definitely played for the country at that point.
Yes.
I'd played in
Yes.
the international friendlies, but never
Yes.
played for the country. I played for the All Star Goa Football Association and so forth,
Yes.
but never in the international arena. I
Yes.
would have. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that I
Correct.
would have not represented India. So
Awesome. Let's get back to now to the younger age, right? Which we are talking about right now. So now, look, a child is not. I mean, most of them are not always as talented, to play sport with a particular amount of skill. So you see that the motivation levels also keep dropping down. The children, right? They try out a sport and they play for a few days and they come and say, I don't want to play and all that. So how does a child keep himself or herself motivated? How do they sustain this interest today? Because see, even children's life is so busy now. I mean, they're busier than the adults. I mean, they go at what 6:45 in the morning, come back at 4 in the evening. Then they have multiple classes to attend. Then they have to fit in their sports class or a fitness class or whatever. Then they have homework, and this is their whole year. So, and then if a child is not having that intrinsic motivation or the skill, there's a good chance that they'll drop out. Do you have any kind of a special magic pill for that? Any suggestion? How do you address this? I'm
I,
sure a lot of parents would want to understand this because that. I mean, there are a lot of parents who say that, he tried football, he tried basketball, but then he lost interest, and then that's it. That's the end of story.
well, I think if that's $1 million question. Let's put it that way. There is definitely no magic formula of keeping the kid motivated in that sport or in sports. There isn't one. What you can do, there are few things that from personal experience, being a father and raising two sons. Of course, my wife raises them. I gotta be honest with you, but I mean, I have a huge influence on the sports side, and and
Yes.
and I'm going to wear a different cap to answer this. I'm going to answer it as a coach from a coaching point because my background today is coaching football and fitness training and in even consulting with different groups. So that's where I am today, and I'm basically in sports medicine. So I'm in sports. So let me answer that question from a sports coaching point of view.
Yes.
I think the key element, and you hit the nail right on the head for that matter. The issue is the schools who has the kid for the longest time, for literally 8 hours or 7 hours or 6 hours, whatever time they have,
Yes.
they need to allocate at least an hour and a half, if necessary, per day. I'm not talking about one lecture or one thing. Per day, they need to make sure the curriculum is adjusted for that physical education and that activity to take place. Now, there is also a issue over there because if you look at our physical education curriculum, it's a weeding process. That means only athletics love that physical education hour. Rest of them absolutely hate it. And I think that needs to be a balance. And I think that's the same thing goes for families, the kids. Like, for example, and I come back to my sons because introduce them to both of them to the same game and same circumstances, yet they turn out so different. So from that, I would say school needs to introduce a very collective program that has, I would say to you, fitness as part of the component, nutrition as part of the component, psychology as part of the component, and then, of course, leadership and communications as part of the component. Why? Because I think you will have within the sports segment, if you look at it, you have a coach, you have an athlete who performs. Right. Then you have a coach, you have a physiotherapist, you have a massage, you have a PR person, you have a general manager, and you have a psychologist, you have a nutritionist. If you look at that eco-cycle within that framework,
absolutely,
you have so many professions that comes into that. And then you have outside forces, whether it is the media, the weather. So if you look at the American model, I think they have really perfected that. So let's stick to the point that you asked me this question.
Yes.
So I think that curriculum needs to be revamped for sure. That's one thing. So for me, I think it starts on keeping that kid in the program, starts with that. Find the strengths in your son or your daughter. If they are saying, no, I do not like it, maybe within that scope, you can find something. So my son says, hey, listen, I don't like playing football. What do you like doing? I like running. So I put him in cross country. So he likes running and he does cross country when he was in high school. The other one does football. So they will find something within that scope, but you just got to find it. And I think there's, from a coaching point of view, these components which I talked about, it is the responsibility of the governance, sports governance, to give that knowledge to our coaches in India. And it's a far cry today. Truly it is, because our coaches do not have that refined, organized information. And I think the problem starts there. So you have a parent who is working, and I saw this in Bangalore. And I made it a point when I did the Adidas Youth Football Academy in CMP ground. I insisted that the parents come and watch their kids play. Because who is to drop them? The drivers is to come and the nannies is to come and drop them to the football field. And I said, no, we are going to change this culturally. I need you to come and sit for that hour and a half or 2 hours on the sideline. Bring your laptop, bring whatever you have to do, but you have to be there. Right. And I think that is a cultural thing. So when the kid sees parents watching and cheering up, and you see this in the United States every weekend, or you see it over here in Portugal, every parent is on the sideline, and the referee gets abused by it mostly. But I would say that all these components put together doesn't allow that kid to veer off that path that you want him, because all the stimuluses are there. The friendship is there because it's a psychosocial development for him. The fitness development is happening for him. And there's also the component I want to throw in as a coach. The introduction of the game to the youth is different than to an adult. You got to keep it fun. You got to keep it exciting. You cannot ignore that. You cannot. Under no circumstances you can ignore it. I would say to you that bringing the fun part and the technical part in an organized manner is a psychological understanding. And if a coach doesn't have that understanding, then you do not know. So I can teach a skill of dribbling to the kids by making a game what I call a shark attack or a cops and robbers, for example. And what I do is I give every kid has a ball, and then there are a whole bunch of them who are like the cops, and the robbers are running with their goods, and they got to protect it with the feet. Now you're seeing a whole lot of fun activity happening. They don't realize that they're learning a skill, but it is. So I think if you bring those kind of teaching methodologies into the equation, you will not see that kind of a fallout that you usually do. I hope I've kind of covered. But if there's something I'm missing, just tell me.
No, I think you answered it. I think it was you well spoken. So this is something where it also comes into the coaching part, right? I mean, the coaches have to understand that to keep the children interested, it's a skill of a coach also. More importantly, I guess, and that's where you're coming from as to how you made you make actually a routine which enhances the skill, make it look like fun.
Yes.
So yeah, that is a skill of a coach, and that there again, I think that's another topic altogether which we need to talk about, right? So and this whole thing of children being fit, playing sport, and all that, it has got benefits. It's got long term benefits that it may not be something which you might immediately see. you know there's crossover academics. I mean, there's scientific research and proof on that people who play also do well in their academics. Yeah.
For sure.
And yeah, despite that, when presently the generation is such that they want instant results, they want instant gratification, which sport may not give. And it does in a way in terms of your how you feel after playing a game, but not like getting an iPhone in your hand or whatever. So I think that's one of the aspects where children also need to be guided by the parents and the coach, I guess, as to why they need to keep going. Again, it comes back to the school curriculum, I guess. The whole process should be inculcated there, isn't it?
You
Yeah.
said something very funny. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine my dad gave me a football as my first early gift that I remember. Today,
Yes,
our dads gives us an iPad or an iPhone or a
exactly.
smartphone, and that's the issue right
Yes,
there,
yes.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at it, I mean, I see this all the time. I mean, kids are so glued to that little screen right in front of them or in front of a big television that
Yes,
that early childhood development, what we thought, I mean, it's a natural process, is missing. Now, unfortunately, it's missing in our country. I mean, on a large scale, you know, it's happening in pockets because if you look at the international schools, whether it is in Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai, I mean, everywhere I go in Delhi, they are
yes,
delivering a phenomenal curriculum. I mean, there are
yes.
so many great things about it, but on a larger scale, absolutely not. So, and I think it's a point worth noting, saying that yeah, keep them away from those gadgets as early as
Yes.
possible, if possible. I mean, it's not, and make a certain hour. Okay, you have your computer or your playtime hour with your iPad or iPhone, but not 24/7 as it is
Yes,
today. And I
yes,
think
yes,
that's
yes.
in itself is a problem.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Going on to the next question. You played professional football. Yeah. You spoke about it as the whole process. Now there were some international players too at that point. I remember Chima Okiri and a couple of
Yeah,
them for East Bengal or Mohammedan Sporting or whatever.
sure.
So at that point, when you were playing, what did you see a difference in between, say, uh, the Indian level of standard of football versus those guys? They may not be the top league players, but then probably they were a little more skillful. I don't know. What is the difference?
No, they were different. They were good for sure. They had a top quality. However, you got to understand, those days only two foreigners were allowed in our
Yeah.
league. So only two foreigners could come, and that was the same rule when I went to United States. I didn't make the first team cut because of that reason. Because there
Ah,
were Brazilians and there were Argentinians who were uh, trying for the same position I was trying, and
right.
without a green card or without a status of a resident alien, you couldn't play in the league. So, if I was to answer the question for you, at a professional level in India, if you look at the top teams, I mean, I mean, you can go. Kolkata had the reputation. Definitely, they had the money and the power behind them, and they were the first one to recruit the Nigerians. Chima Okeri, Chibuzur, Valentino. Of course, later on, I played with Bernard Opranozie, Tony Okafor, Valentin Ezugo. Many were they good? Yes, absolutely. And the reason one element they had one up on us was they were physically monsters. I
Strong.
mean, they were
Yes.
built like trunks. I mean, and I used to say to Bernard because he was my roommate. I said, "What is that you do? I mean, were you born like this? I mean, So it goes back to this genetics, and
Yes.
I got to answer this systematically to say that there is a need, there is an understanding. That's why I said early tests can tell you. And if you look at mom and if you look at dad, you can see a whole lot of things. So to me, I feel that the next generation athlete from India is coming now, those kids who are born now. Why? Because dad has been exposed to fantastic, dad grew up as a sportsman with the modern methodology, going to the fitness, eating the right kind of foods and taking care of himself. So the kid is far more athletic than dad was and probably will grow a little taller. So going back to our days, they were physically strong and they overpowered us from that point. But I remember playing Mohammedan Sporting in Rovers Cup in front of like 60,000 people, and we beat them.
Yeah.
We beat them 2-1. In the quarterfinals. And
really?
Yeah. And Rovers Cup, and of course Dempo. I was playing for Dempos at that point. But Dempos also, we had strong, well-built athletes. I can look back and say Mahesh Lotlekar, David D'Souza. Of course, I have to mention a name by Nicolas Pereira, who was an iconic football player of Goa at that point in terms of a defender. And he was the only Indian at one point to score an international goal in Madreka Cup. So, we had solid, strong players that competed. But the development of Indian athlete at that point was absolutely not structured. Ram, you cannot compare it with today. We did not have a gym. Let's put it that way. We would have a bamboo with two cement blocks. One was heavier than the other. We would carry a brick along and run in the soft sand. So we did rudimentary development methodologies. So yes, the athletes of those days the foreigners were quite strong as compared to us. And I think also I want to hit one note quickly over here to say to you that the perception of us as a foreigner was oh, he's a foreigner, so he must be good.
Yes.
And that was wrong. And I think that's where the biggest failure, even today, I see that among the athletes. They see a foreign team and they say, wait a minute, let's not lose by a big margin. So we have lost the game before the game has begun, in other words.
Yes, good, Elvis. You make a lot of points which are, quite thought-provoking. So, Elvis, just a couple of questions. See, now, in India, academics is prioritized for a particular reason. They think it gives a secure future. Money comes into the play, and a lot of parents think, okay, if they put them in any kind of sport, they eventually will play for a few years, which will compromise their academics. They may not earn too much of money, or they may not earn any money at all, which will be the case with most kids, I guess. So there's a kind of paradox in that situation, right? So that plays. I think how academics is prioritized so much here. They go out of the way. Right now you see in this situation we have online classes which are taken so seriously, and kids sitting with their gadgets and going through that whole class. It's when it comes to sport, they believe that they may not be earning money with this, but they need to play. How do you address this? In your case, you just went about. You loved football. You just went and played. You didn't think much about it, and you had supportive parents to do that as well, right?
I would say to you that what you're bringing is a day-to-day question. I hear this all the time. So we have a small academy, and I think I can best answer it from that point of that direction. So let's go about this way. We have an academy over here. We get a lot of Indian athletes that come after their 10th standard and after their 12th standard, many of them. Those who come after the 10th standard still do online education. Okay? They have a passion to pursue football. The question that is raised by parents all the time, I do not want my son to neglect education. And nobody is asking you to. There is enough time in the day that you can do both.
Yes.
All right. So if you look at from 6 a.m. in the morning, or even if you take 8 a.m. in the morning till 8 p.m. in the evening, you got plenty of time that you can do everything and more, as long as you have a structured system. Not completely, because you need a downtime also, right? Everyone needs a downtime. Yes. So I would say to you that in this system, what I request the parents is this: keep him in education, but introduce him to a sport, whether it is an academy, whether it is a club or whatever, but give him a balanced growth. give him a balanced growth, because the moment some parents, I can give you an example of a kid that I selected when I was doing Adidas Youth Football Academy, who could probably have gone on to become a world-class player in a foreign country. However, parents said to me, I cannot send him abroad because his education is going to be compromised. He was a footballer, and I'm not going to throw the name over here. He was from Goa. He was a footballer selected at that time in the Adidas program to be sent to Bayern Munich, which we did.
Oh, okay.
So he goes to Bayern Munich, and two other kids, the three of them went. He performs really well. He's selected. He wants the academy turns around to us, the program, and says, what is our chances of taking one of this boy in our program? And he's 12 years old and has all the potential, the build. His father used to play professional football with me. All right. So he had the pedigree, in other words. He had the genetics and the DNA in him. Parents decide not to send him. The academy was willing to pay for everything, including the dad or mom to move over there, because the UEFA rules requires. And it didn't happen. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. So coming back to our academy, what I say to the boys is that all of them, they do online education, or they enroll over here in Portugal, colleges and so forth. Some of them go to international schools, but they get very little time for football, because we do training in the morning and we do training in the evening. Our main focus is football, but we do not allow you to neglect your education. There is an hour given for you. Morning training finishes at about 11 o'clock. From 11 o'clock, because your evening training starts at 7 o'clock in the evening. So you have all this time to do what you want. You can take a power nap, recover from the morning training session, sit on your computer and study. So that, I think that balance needs to be presented. And I think it's the same thing of saying in India, that balance needs to be given to the kids, saying that, hey, wait a minute. And I do not see, I mean, for me, I feel it's fine. I mean, I don't think a kid is going to be neglected in any sense, his educational thing. I use this example from a talk I heard on the TED Talks. Our body should not be designed to carry our head around, right? I mean, we develop this brain so much that this body we have completely not forgotten about, which actually, I mean, it has to be, joined together.
Yes.
And I think that is the failure. I see many of the, I mean, I used to run in the sports day at Indus International School, and I was always winning the 100-meter dash, and my sons were all excited about it. The poor guys' parents I used to run against had never run before, and which was not a fair race at all by any means, right? Yes. So it's not a fair comparison, and I think parents needs to bring that, so the kid doesn't go out in that path. He needs to have a balanced growth, according to me.
Very nicely said. Final question.
Yes.
What was the most important thing you gained by pursuing sport, and how did it make a difference in your life? What do you think was what do you think that this is because I played sport? Whatever you are, whatever you feel, you have gained the most. What is it?
I would say resilience, perseverance, overcoming challenges. I have not had I don't want to make it sound that I have had a smooth ride. Absolutely not. I had more downfalls than success.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly. And I think one of the experience is what I can share with parents who are listening is to say, expose your children to these challenges in life. Don't protect them. Don't be overprotective. Of course, protect them where it is required to be. But from a physical point of view, don't let them fall. Let them scrape their hands and knees. It's part of the growth. You cannot carry a child. He'll never learn how to walk. You got to let him experience somebody pushing him off. You learn that and coming home with a bruised nose or an eye or an elbow.
Yes.
It is part of learning. We cannot protect. If you not allow that child early stages to go through that, I cannot, or any of the top level coaches cannot make that difference. And I'm going to answer it in two parts for you. So for me, I learned that early, because we grew up in streets.
Yes.
It was a football match played 5v5 or 7v7, sometimes 10v10 for a popsicle, and it was a battle. I mean, trust me, it scraped our toes. I mean, name it.
Yeah.
Playing barefoot. But at the end of it, was there fights? Of course, fights broke out. Punches were thrown. I remember even throwing a stone at a good friend of mine, Agnel Miran. I mean, he's a professional. He went on to play professional football, and my dad, had the heyday with me on that one. But I mean, I got exposed to the sports in that sense. I was not protected in that circumstances, in environment. I was given a chance to evolve. So for me, I think that resilience. So every time I failed, whether I failed in business, whether I was laid off from my work, whether when the pandemic hit, I think about sports. What do I do? That sportsman comes out of me. I know that I have been down 2-0 in a professional game, and we have come out in the second half and scored 3.
Yes.
And that is a team effort and a performance that brings out. So if you look at a sportsman and if you instill these principles in a child early on, adulthood becomes much more easier. And also the transition to professionalism becomes much more easier. Because I would be naive to say that the world is perfect. The world is a very cynical place in many ways. For every positive thing you say, there is one guy who's saying 10 negatives. For every positive message you want to pass out, there is 10 negatives out there. So there is so much negativity in the world. And even with this pandemic news, you only hear about all the deaths. Nobody's hearing about the survival stories of somebody who really had it and went through this thing, and human ingenuity and help from the nurses and the frontline workers help that person recover. Nobody's hearing that. I think we need to talk about that more than the dying part of it, because this fear has come upon us and we have gone into a cocoon and put ourselves in a bubble. And I'll say this because there are parents who are probably listening and will listen. Some of the academy boys who are here, they went to India because they thought the pandemic was coming to Europe. They packed their bags, put the masks on, boarded a flight and went. It was like running from the frying pan to the fire. And now they're stuck in the apartment. They cannot go out. They're lost everything. I have some kids. One particular kid that I really was interested in seeing that he could be a top Indian national player. He's stuck in his apartment for the last 5 months. Oh. And I'm sure he doesn't have all the components he requires. How do you balance that? So to me, that is the key. So what I did, going back to your answering that question about sportsmen or being a sportsman made me that. I'm not going to give up. I mean, this is you live once, There's a nice marketing slogan over here. One life, live it well. Yes. So I would say to you, I'll finish on that note to say to you that is what I would like to see. A sportsman who never gives up. And those are the qualities that I learned in being a sportsman.
Brilliant. It's really good. Really amazing. I mean, that's what sport does, isn't it? I mean, it's all about building. I mean, I always, I don't know if it's a quote I saw somewhere or is it my own, I still don't know. But I always said that a playground teaches more than a classroom ever will. So awesome, Elvis. We will talk more on your journey to the US and how you came back to India and you started off, you did a lot of things here. I mean, you dealt with youth athlete development. You had a youth football league, which you started here with Adidas. And then post that, you're in Portugal now, and you're an academy there. And there again, you're training a lot of young footballers. There's a lot of story remaining in this. So for now, we'll stop here. And we'll meet again next week and continue this.
Right? I appreciate it, Ramam, and thanks for this opportunity to share my stories. And I hope it makes some sense to people listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that was Elvis Goes, you all. I hope you liked the show. We tried to cover as much as we could in terms of, how a parent or a child can pursue sport. What are the challenges that one encounters? What are the benefits? Coming from a person who has gone through this whole journey, and there is more to this. We'll be coming back next week with another episode of this part two, where we'll be talking more about his stint in the US and what he learned there, and what are the learnings that we could imbibe from a country like the US, which is very progressive when it comes to these kind of things. And then his journey back to India and the work that he did here with kids, and of course now in Portugal is doing pretty well in Portugal as well. So we're going to talk a lot about these things in the next episode. So I'll see you all then. Hope you all like this. I'll keep in touch again. Bye now.